Do you think that the older generation feel fulfilled in their career?
How would you quantify the older generation?
Like which generation? Like 40s, 50s? Because from what I see, like parents and aunties and uncles, they like to complain about their job or example like that. And then they say, oh, this is just normal. You have to go through this. And then they normalize it. The way they explain their job, it's like, are they fulfilled? Because they kind of question a lot of things and then they normalize it until today. And then even though it doesn't have to be that way, like we can be more open, we can be more flexible in terms of maintaining balance between mental health and also professionalism. So would you say from your experience, from what you've seen, are they actually fulfilled in their career?
It's a great question. Well, I'll maybe tease it out a little bit. If I think about those in their 40s,
right.
Simply because I belong in that age group, so I probably can relate. I'm probably a bit biased. But I personally feel like this layer of leaders in organizations have experienced both worlds, right? They've experienced the baby boomers, the Gen X's way of working and values that they attribute to work. And they are now also being educated by the younger generations that are giving a different perspective. And if I just look at my clients who are mostly senior managers in organizations belonging to this age group, I find that they have a lot of empathy for both. And they are probably going to be like the catalyst for the change that's going to happen, because they empathize with the older generation and they empathize with the new generation. And they want to support the new generation. They want to understand. They're getting curious. They have the openness to do things differently. They're more open to new experiences. They want to see how they can enable the younger generation. They're less big on power distancing. So I think this is a generation of leaders that's going to be a real catalyst into embracing the new ways of working that the younger generation brings. I think this is a generation that is also valuing other things apart from work, because they're being educated by the younger generation on how to do things. So I am being educated by my colleague who is from a different generation on how to do things, and I see that with my clients as well. And I think in terms of fulfillment, they probably get a lot of fulfillment from learning, from growing, from being part of this change. So I can't speak for everyone, of course, but I think the general trend is that those in their 40s are probably in a place where they want to be part of the change, and they're fulfilled by their ability to bring this change forward.
So it really depends on the individuals.
I think so. Though I would, again, not biased at all, but I think that's the coolest generation in terms of being a catalyst and being that bridge. So they're able to translate the needs of the younger generation. So in this case, the Gen Zs and the very young millennials, able to communicate those needs back up and say, guys, we need to think differently. These are managers that can have conversations about mental health. These are managers that the young, as Gen Zs, can maybe come up and say, I'm not feeling good today. And they would be able to say what's going on. Or these are generations that can actually have good feedback, which is key, and advocate for feedback. And these are the generations that understand that it is important to build someone's self-esteem, because you get more out of people when you encourage them and you bring out the best in them. And these are the leaders that probably lead from trust and with trust rather than want to lead with fear. So I would think that gives a great sense of fulfillment, being able to be part of such exciting change. And that's what I see with my clients as well. I see them really caring about people. They're more people-centric. They want to engage. They want to inspire.
Right.
They want to learn from the younger generation. There are things going on like reverse mentoring, because mentoring has always been seen as someone more senior mentoring someone more junior. And reverse mentoring is actually something that young managers or senior managers, but of the younger, let's say 40 age group, is starting to say, hey, let's do this. Let's do reverse mentoring, because I have so much to learn from the younger generation. So these concepts are being accepted more.
I see.
So that's a generation that I think is fulfilled.
Right.
Yeah. The older generation, I don't know. What I see, at least from my clients, is that they probably have a different set of values and meaning that they attribute to work and success. And so from that perspective, I suppose they gain fulfillment in how they view success and the meaning of work.
Right. Even if it means to the traditional definition of success, but if that's what they want and they achieve, that is their sense of fulfillment.
Absolutely, because that's what they've been sort of groomed and conditioned to. And I would think that they are. I think maybe that's where the struggle comes from. Why are you unhappy? Or like sometimes clients tell me, like, why do we need to talk about all this at work? Why do we need to? It's like, I'm not a psychologist and I'm not a teacher, and that's not my role.
Right.
And I'm like, but people spend 8 to 10 hours a day at work. It's got to be positive. We have to have these conversations. So I think their understanding was so different that they probably feel fulfilled in their own way.
I see. This isn't necessarily a trend, but I've seen on TikTok people discussing about, for example, from what I've seen, like medicine student, they've studied for like 5-6 years, and then they realize they can't cope with it. This is not what they wanted. Like it doesn't align with their mental health and what their goal is at the end. It drains them. So, but then people also say that we've already gone too far to change. Like they're hesitant for the change. Like, would you say that what is it called? Like, what is this phenomenon, and is it normal, or like how do people change that?
Absolutely. I mean, the term for it is sunk cost fallacy. So we've invested, or we believe that we've invested so much into something that we don't want to move out from it, because we feel like we will lose all that we've invested in. So for example, I work a lot with investment bankers and traders, and this is one of the things we discuss, right? You hold the tendency to hold on to a bad stock because you've already bought it, right? And you're like, oh, maybe it's going to pick up, and I've spent so much of money already investing in the stock. So there is this hesitancy. So as human beings, we have something that's called a loss aversion.
Right.
To give you an example, if I were to tell you, okay, Fauza, you have two options, right? You could have a 100% chance of getting 1,000 ringgit versus a 75% chance of getting 1,500 ringgit.
Right.
Which option would you go for, just instinctively?
I would go for the 100%.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's the loss aversion. Even though it's 75% chance of getting 1,500, we have such a pull towards loss.
Right.
It's very innate. Like, there's this just sense of oops, I don't want to lose something. And that's probably what goes on in the mind when people are thinking about a career change or a career shift. It's like, I've invested all of this, and they see it as a loss,
right,
rather than seeing it as a potential gain. Of course, this is simplifying it, because alongside is the fear of the unknown, the fear of leaving familiarity, the fear of failure. There are all these things that come into play, but one of it is definitely the loss. But what I know is, due to COVID, I know at least 2 or 3 people, clients, who have been sort of forced to make a career shift. So I know someone in finance and she was doing really, really well, but she lost her job during COVID, and then she started a business of, making like healthy snacks. And it was out of necessity, right? So at that point in time, she didn't even have the capacity to process about a loss, or she just needed to sort of move on to something to help her survive, right? And now she has a thriving business, and she is so happy and so fulfilled. And she's like, oh my goodness, what was I doing? Right? I was so working all these long hours and being so stressed. And now I'm so happy because she's always been very healthy. And so now she's actually turning that into a business and helping people to become healthy and eat healthy, and that brings her so much joy.
So there's a positive outcome from there, but other people can't see it, because again, like, it also ties to the definition of success. If I quit now with all the things that I've invested in, then this is not success, this is failure, even though there could be another success in a different area.
Absolutely, right? It's especially, for example, if you're thinking of leaving one of the more traditional jobs, like, I don't know, like an engineer or a doctor, right, like you mentioned, and maybe moving on towards something a bit more contemporary, like being a travel blogger,
right,
for example, right? And that comes with all these fears, but also maybe, again, societal pressure and definition of success. And do I want to leave my stable job and pursue something that is more aligned to, let's say, a passion? There is, of course, these things that play out. And I suppose for those of you who are having at a crossroad or at a dilemma, is to look forward, right? There's I like to use this with clients, like, it's, I don't know how it came about, I don't even know if it's true, but it's maybe an inside joke, and like a Ferrari doesn't have a rear view mirror, you know, and like, why would a Ferrari need a rear view mirror? Why do I care what's behind me? I'm going forward, I'm in a Ferrari, right? And I use that as a metaphor to say, look forward, and you can learn from your past, of course, but look forward and don't get sucked into the past.
Right.
So focus the energy, the reflections, the objectives on what you want to achieve, which is looking forward, and then craft how you want to get there, rather than focusing all that into the past.
Yeah. That also reminds me back in the first episode where you mentioned, like, you gave advice of like self-reflection and knowing what you want, because that gives a better sense of fulfillment, because at the end of the day, it's you who are going to have this journey. It's not other people just see it. So that if the other option makes someone feel better and someone's mental health feels good, so that why does it matter that other people say otherwise? Because at the end of the day, it's you.
Absolutely. And if you can that become very comfortable in accepting who you are and what your needs are and what your wants are, and having that clarity of thought,
right,
it really propels you forward, because then you are probably still doing some comparisons, but they will be comparisons that are benchmarked against your own values, which will be more meaningful. And yeah, so I mean, I also know of someone in their 50s who decided to leave a very successful career and just pursue. She got her certification in yoga, and then she became a yoga teacher.
Yeah.
And that brings her a lot of fulfillment. And I think the reality is that when we had those conversations, is she needed to also realize what she had to give up, and being comfortable with giving that up. So giving up her big house, giving up maybe expensive vacations, giving up her expensive skincare, but understanding that these were things that she was very willing to give up because she was focused on what she wanted to get.
Yeah.
and then she kind of pursued it, and that makes her feel so good.
Yeah, I've seen that as well. Like I've seen, I'm not sure, like engineers or doctors, like they already had like a stable job, something that is like you can be proud of, like every financially stable and everything. But then they decided that this isn't working for them, and then they just quit their job and go to just become a barista at a Starbucks. But then that what makes them happy. So like that is like another definition of success. So in their life, that is success, even though it's not the traditional way of people seeing it. But then you don't have to have so much to be happy or feel fulfilled at the end of the day.
Absolutely. I mean, I remember there was an occasion where I was coming back from the airport and traffic was bad, and I was having a conversation with my Grab driver, and she was telling me that she just quit her corporate job and she's doing this and she's enjoying it because she works 3 days a week, and she chooses her hours.
Yeah.
And so therefore she can cook for herself healthy meals. She can plan. She has more time for her mom, who was at that point in time quite sick, which is why she also wanted to be there and take care of her mom and be there for her mom, and she sounded so happy. And I think when we start to shift our perception and to really care about our happiness and other people's happiness, I think that's when we will start to relook at a lot of these things.
Right.
I mean, think about parents, right? When they may have a certain way that they want you to follow, but when they see that you're so unhappy, they typically prioritize happiness. And I think if we all started to prioritize our happiness and everyone else's happiness,
right,
then we would just look at these things with a different lens and see that people are actually doing things that make them successful and happy. And then we glorify that.
Yeah.
But idealistic maybe at this point, but I think we're heading there.
Yeah, and it doesn't just apply to younger generations. It can go back to like the older generation. Like, doesn't matter your age, like you can still make a change for yourself.
Absolutely. I think that's the magic that the younger generation is bringing, that they're becoming more accepting of these things, that the older generation, maybe that were not afraid to speak up then and actually stuck with doing things the traditional way, now look and learn and say, hey, I can do this too.
Yeah.
And I think that's remarkable.
Yeah, that's the beauty of it.
Yeah.
I think that's all that we have for this episode.
Yeah, it was a great episode. Lovely speaking to you.